morning, this is about to close. And we're about to finish with this section. But I just want to recap what we did, what we heard this morning. It's about how do we mobilize corporate America and how do we mobilize as a community. I'm going to ask people there on the back, if you don't mind, maybe Steve, maybe like if we can keep it quiet, thank you. If we can mobilize corporate America as a community. You heard the Hispanic Star Hubs. I need everybody to know that that's a resource, that is a unifying factor, that is voluntarism for your activities, that is like an opportunity to really make a commitment and engage, as Marisa Solis was saying, in the long run. We also heard about how do we engage, mobilize, how do we mobilize corporate America with Latinos as a consumer, from media to sports to marketing. This afternoon we're going to have a session, an incredible, I think, groundbreaking action that Procter & Gamble is taking to open the lead for more companies to come and feed forward. Now we're going to move into the last piece, which is the employment, the employer. You heard Robert Rodriguez talk about like the incredible power of ERGs or affinity groups that normally should turn into BRGs. For me, this is one of the key areas that we have heard again and again, which is we have the power. We're starting demanding, and we have so many people that Latinos that are working in America. If we would just unify and empower ourselves when we're employees, we would be able to actually come stronger and say like, hi, can you make your corporation more Hispanic friendly so that we can all win here? So I think that what we have heard in the last year and a half or two that we've been working on this is that there's a magic taco. When ERGs or employers get activated, and all of a sudden the C-suite gets it. You've been telling them for 5 years, you've been showing the data for 5 years, but all of a sudden there's one big thing, might be critical mass, might be the other CEO, might be that we impose our agenda in front of C-suite. When that two-piece, the ERG, the employees, and the C-suite magic happens, there's a magic. And that is why we have to actually activate our ERGs, but we have to go to the C-suite. We have to go, and that's why we're taking, for example, our second Hispanic Star delegation to Davos, to the World Economic Forum, to be present where CEOs are, to be able to be talking to CEOs and say, like, regardless of whether you have a company in Japan or if you're an American company, if you want to grow, look no further. Just come to Mama. And we have to actually be able to open those doors and keep on doing it. And I think that the last thing I want to say before I introduce the panel on Hispanic Promise, you heard all about data. Data. We own the data. For the first time in my life, I'm not fighting against the current. I'm always like with poverty or maternal mortality or causes like that are really hard. In this case, it's like we just have to ride the flow because the data is there. Well, data is not enough. We have to become data activists. We have to take data with action. We have to become factivists. We have to act on our data. We have to become ambassadors on it. And for those of us that have a choice, make the bloody choice. Every time. If you're going to send flowers to people, buy from a flower Hispanic owner. If you're going to dress, go Hispanic fashion designers. If you're going to go to the nails, if you're going to go into a restaurant, make the choice to support each other. Can you do that? Yes. And I'm very happy, actually, that there are so many great Hispanic designers, because I'm not going to stop, actually. I'm just going to start wearing Hispanic because I just want to make sure that everyone that has a choice does it. And that we can start celebrating our fashion designers and everyone that we have. So the last piece that I have today, the last piece of voice that I have, because tonight I'm just going to have my dancing. But no talking, just dancing. But the last piece is about the pain, the real thing that all of us explore, like experience one way or another, the rejection. The slight sense of second-class citizens that we have all felt, the slight sense of invisibility of really you don't really belong here. I don't want to actually start looking at how much for decades that is like the slow bleeding that happens when you have to pretend you're someone you are not. when you have to try to pretend to blend in and actually even disappear so that you can even get a job. And that is why we created the Hispanic Promise, a promise that we're making corporations make to us to hire, promote, retain, and celebrate us. That promise is not even 3 years old. It's the one corporate pledge that exists in corporate America. So that you get a sense, there are 50 pledges for pets, pet shelters. There are 100 for African American, 300 for women. There's one for Latinos. But that one, the Hispanic Promise, has everyone on board. We have more than 29 Latino organizations that are backing it. It's the one thing. Please, Latino, Hispanic Star backers, stand up. Cindy Benavides, Patricia Mota, Hispa, please, Hispanic Star backers. I want to ask signatories, those 250 companies that have signed the Hispanic Promise. Be proud, man. You made a promise to us. Stand up. This is the room. Hispanic Promise signatories, Hispanic Promise backers. I want to have this room with everybody standing up next time. We need every company making us a promise and giving us a promise so that we can be united. Because every one of us are the future employee. There's no way that companies can hire or sell without us. And so what I want to invite to the podium is this is the last segment of the day. And after this, we're gonna, like those of you that are registered, we're gonna have the buses going to the United Nations so that we have a beautiful launch. Well, beautiful, I hope that it will be a beautiful launch at the United Nations so that we can start looking deeper into our networking, our connecting with each other, but also looking at the opportunity to go deeper into this. I want to introduce these ladies from the University of Chicago, but here's the ratio. I'm like, let me actually just like, where's the clicker? Anyone who has a clicker? There you go, please. So, no, this is not what I wanted to show. Sorry about that. Okay, no, we don't have it. We don't have the, no problem. It's okay. I want to show the flag of 3M. The Hispanic Promise has no teeth. It's great because it's a promise. And I promised to those of you, the backers, that believed in us at the beginning, that we needed to get to critical mass before starting looking at what else. When we created the Sustainable Development Goals, it was the same process. It was about trying to get a framework of action so that everybody can be in the same page. Whether you're in gender or you're in environment or you're in education, we all belong to the master plan of making the planet and the people better. In this case, the Hispanic Promise is a promise to make corporate America more friendly for Latinos. But we're ready to take the step forward because we reached 250 companies. And we're ready to actually take the next step and see who wants to be part of that conversation. The Sustainable Development Goals were created with 5 years of painful conversations with everybody saying, what are the goals? What are the indicators? How do we measure? How do we bring accountability? We have to do that for inclusion. Diversity and inclusion are going to be here to stay in the next 10 years, and no one really knows how to measure. What are the best practices? How do we do it together? So we as Latinos, we have an opportunity to bring a role model, a plug and play for other communities to follow. We can create the Sustainable Development Goals for inclusion. And I'm super proud to say that the University of Chicago accepted to be our academic partner to guide us through this process so that we can have in the same room corporations and Latino organizations deciding together what are the goals that we want to achieve, how are the indicators that we want to do, and how we're going to measure this framework. So please, we're going to have like a 1-minute conversation about this here. At the United Nations, we're going to workshop it more so that we can start looking at what are the areas that we all agree on to do. So please, ladies and gentlemen, Christina and Nadia from the University of Chicago.
Gracias, Claudia. Well, just to very, very briefly go over, we wanted to share 6 key pillars that is going to serve as the foundation. I know we discussed this a lot yesterday, but somos el futuro. That we are driving labor force growth and productivity. We need to be represented. There is no limit to how high our stars will rise. So, to briefly go over the pillars, we had input from our core team members, and we've developed these 6 pillars you see here: prepare and develop, hire, promote, retain, celebrate, and finally buy and invest, something that we discussed yesterday. So we're really looking forward to continuing this conversation and gathering everybody's insight and expertise as we move to the next phase, which will be identifying key indicators to measure our success, assess the progress, and hold everyone accountable for helping us reach these goals. So thank you again for the opportunity, and we will see you at lunch. 1 minute. You want to say, you want to add? She can add. No. 30 seconds.
And maybe so many of you have seen the Hispanic Promise in its iteration with the 5 pillars, but we really took it a level deeper and we thought about a couple of key maybe concepts and takeaways. There's an intersection of the pillars and the community. We need to recognize that preparation and advancement are not limited within the time frame and they don't just happen once. They're cyclical in nature, which is why these 6 pillars, think about them as a spider web when every member can enter in any given point. We need to really rely on the data that so many of you have called out yesterday and today. This U.S. Census Bureau, the Bureau of Labor Statistics, because what we do needs to be reflective of the forecasted growth of the Hispanic workforce population. We need to utilize these pillars to equip organizations to support Hispanic employees and their professional development. We need to drive that upward mobility that so many of you have been talking about by implementing the inclusive best practices which reinforce the interdependencies with the Hispanic community. And last but not least, we are the future. So it is critical to emphasize the social responsibility organizations have to our community. We'll look forward to workshopping many of the ideas that you have brought to the table at our luncheon at the United Nations. Thank you all so much for listening to us today. Turning it back over to Claudia.
Thank you. Thank you so very much. Now look, I mean, like for those of you that can be part of it, let's establish together what are the goals? What are the indicators? What are the ways to measure? What are the ways to report? How do we make it happen together? This is not going to be overnight, but it's going to be really important. We're going to go to the United Nations thanks to the absolute quick sponsorship and magic actually from JP Morgan Chase that allowed us to sponsor for this lunch. So thank you so much for the support of what we're doing. And this is the wrap. I just want to close with my boss. This is the chair of my board, Jose Luis Prado, who's going to give us the final words and reflections of the day. After that, see you at the bosses going for the United Nations. God bless you. Thank you so much for being part of the Hispanic Leadership Summit 2021. Jose Luis Prado.
Thank you, Claudia. Well, I must say that I am very sorry that Claudia lost her voice this morning, and we saw her low-energy version of her. But I'm glad you saw her yesterday in full power. I think you are going to agree with me that we all love the concept of Hispanic Star, right? I think you will agree that we saw a constellation of stars these 2 days, going through this scenario. And to me, was the best example of what the future of our Hispanic community is. Because we are in Broadway, we are not parking the car, taking the trash, we are at the stage, and from here we are going to lead in the country. So thank you all. Before I forget, I want to thank again the team, the foundation team, for all this tremendous work. Thank you very much, all of you. Thank you. Thank you to my board members. Thank you to those allies that came with us today. Kenneth, I think you were talking about the importance of talking to the real target, that is the decision makers in the country. And so those of you that have been pioneers and that have had the vision to see it early in the game, you are very important allies, and we fully appreciate to have you with us today. But I think the best thanks goes to all the leaders of the Hispanic organizations, because you have been working for a very long time. You did not start a few years ago. You represent leaders in communities that have had making the heavy lifting to get all of us here. Let me move then to a quick introduction of mine. Why I have the honor of working with Claudia and the foundation in this role. I was born in Mexico. I had a long tenure career with PepsiCo, 30 years of service, and that took me around to several countries. So I have lived in Spain, I have lived in Puerto Rico, I lived in Argentina and visited a lot Monica, Uruguay. I loved Benedetti, I loved Citarrosa. And I loved in Argentina the tango, the food, the music. So I believe that has prepared me well to play a role in two very important initiatives in the state. And by the way, I came to run Quaker Oats North America in Chicago for PepsiCo, and I was the first Mexican to lead a major division in the States for them. So thank you, thank you. I think all of that has prepared me well for two things. One, to work with Claudia and the team on this foundation and with all of you. And second, just to share with you the excitement that following on Danny's work for many years, I will be part of the new board that will create the National Museum of the American Latino in Washington. So that's amazing. Those two things I consider once in a lifetime opportunities to contribute. And I think everything I did before has been just in preparation to do this job. Now, let me tell you my version of what I heard these 2 days. I think I heard a tale of two cities. On the one hand, we saw a very sovereign review of how large are still the gaps that we face in our community to have fair representation, equity, and fair development and role in decisions. We saw that generally our representation is either 1, 2, 3, or 4, right? And it's very, very low. That's our reality. But I think we also saw the other side of the coin. That is, that there is a lot of indicators that show that there is momentum building up, that we are advancing in several spheres. We heard from Richard on the awakening of the Hispanic consumer and having a bigger voice in demanding from companies a position on how they will support the Hispanic communities. We heard from advancements in education. We heard from how we are making strides in health and how we are making strides in financial development. But we have to agree that it's still a small base, but the momentum is building up. And that's where it all starts. Sometimes you cannot be the largest, but if you are small, you have to be the fastest growing. And that's what we own. We don't have to just talk about the scale. We have to talk about the momentum that we can build. From there, I would like to offer to you my version of what I believe we heard from you that is our call to action going forward. And I have not had the chance, as you can imagine, to align with the board and with Claudia. But this is my version, and this is what we will be discussing. The first thing is everything starts with a vision, an idea, a group of committed leaders, and we are fortunate to have you all with us today. What is then the vision of we are all human? What is our vision? Just to remind you, 3 things: mobilize corporate America, elevate Hispanics' perception and representation, and celebrate and recognize Hispanics' contributions. That is our focus. That is the vision. And we are going to remain focused on that. Everything you saw these 2 days emanates from that focus. But we need to move to the next phase. And the next phase is all about how, who, when. The first phase is like the architecture drawings. The second one is the engineering blueprints, how we are going to make this happen. And it starts with a strategy. And I want to share with you the pillars of our strategy where we will be focusing going forward. And I have tried to capture what you guys share with us into this strategy. We need to mobilize corporate America. Corporations are the strongest force for change in any country. Let me give you an example. If an employee resource group goes to their management and says, support our employee group, how much money do you think they will get? 5,000? 10,000? Maybe 25,000, the most generous, okay? If you convince a Procter & Gamble that Hispanics are their future in terms of consumers, employees, suppliers, and community, you know what they do? They develop campaigns and they make investments. And they are investing now millions of dollars in touching the lives of thousands of Latinos with their initiatives and products. So it becomes a tremendous multiplier. That's why we are focused on activating corporate America, because that's the most powerful force that we can liberate. The second one is we have to galvanize our unity. That was a big theme through the 2 days. Unity, unity, unity. And I was very encouraged that we were not focusing on where we were coming from. We celebrated where we were coming from. Nothing wrong with that. But we know that we have a common goal and mission to achieve. And that's where all of you were focused. You were not focused on the past. You were focused on the future, on the mission. So we need to build a strategic impact leveraging that unity. And let me make a summary of the initiatives that Claudia has built here that all of you saw reflected in the conversation and announcements. You saw Hispanic Star, Hispanic Promise. We are building a big idea on changing perception. You will hear from that in the next meetings. Hispanic Heritage Month, Hispanic hubs, factivism, a strategic mapping of Hispanic organizations, and collaborating with Hispanic organizations like never before. Those are big strategic initiatives, and I think all of you have been embracing this from your different fronts, from government, NGO, education, media. Everybody sees these initiatives and they say, right, we didn't have this umbrella set of initiatives that can unite us, but importantly, from unity has to come a scale and big impact, right? So embracing these initiatives, refining them and evolving them to elevate our impact is our second priority. The third one is, I think, we have to leverage and elevate the work that the Hispanic organizations do. This task we have at hand is monumental, and it requires, it takes a village. It takes many villages to make the change we are looking for. We cannot be naive about it. That's why we need the work that all of you are doing and have been doing for many years, and I would suggest to you, we need to put it on steroids for 2022. We need to double up that effort.